Welcome to the Qasim Rashid Show, a civil rights lawyer here to expose all forms of injustice with a sprinkling of dad jokes in between. Here's your host, Qasim Rashid.
Good morning and peace be upon you this beautiful Sunday, wherever you're tuning in from. My name is Qasim Rashid, and this is the Qasim Rashid Show here on Sirius XM Urban View Channel 126, the most awesome show in the multiverse. If you're listening on Substack, make sure you hit that subscribe button so we can continue to create this advocacy. We've got a really important show covering a bunch of critical contemporary issues, including these horrific fires out of California. We're going to have Ariana Jasmine back with us today. She's based out of California, Northern California, but knows the area well because she's worked on climate justice initiatives in California for quite some time. She was with us last about 5-6 months ago, maybe. She's a political commentator, just does brilliant work on human rights, progressive issues, specialist in the Middle East. She's been featured on the CNN, BBC, NBC, you name it. She's fantastic. So we're going to have her on. I also want to talk about two other things. One, I want to talk about the rise of Christian nationalism that we're seeing in the Trump administration. There's a scene in Lord of the Rings where, in the first one, where Frodo and the other hobbits are being chased by the Wraiths, right? They know he has the ring, and he's hiding in the Prancing Pony. And this is when we're introduced to Aragorn, right? That's called Strider at the time. And there's a scene where Aragorn picks up Frodo, takes him to the hotel room to hide from the Wraiths. And he says to Frodo, "Are you frightened?" And he says, "Yes." And Aragorn responds, "Well, you're not nearly frightened enough." And I think it's important. The reason why I share that story and the reason why it applies here is I think it's important we understand how bad things are going to get. I'm not a doomsday guy. You guys know me well. I'm not one to overreact. I am one to accurately react. And we need to be very deliberate about how we're responding because the level of Christian nationalism that we're seeing, and to be sure, I distinguish Christianity from Christian nationalism. Christianity is a religion, and we should protect every person's right to believe or not believe as they wish. Christian nationalism is a fascist ideology that is trying to hijack Christianity. So imagine this: a Secretary of Defense who screams, "Kill all Muslims." Or imagine a counterterrorism director who believes converting to Islam is suspicious and should be reported to the authorities for arrest. Or a House Speaker who fabricates prayers to make it seem like the founding fathers wanted a theocracy, and then starts to pass legislation and budgets that enact Christian nationalism in our schools. And the scary part is that none of this is hypothetical. This is not a mere warning of what's to come. This is stuff that's already happening. This is Christian nationalism that's already happening. It has taken center stage in American domestic and foreign policy. Let's start with House Speaker Mike Johnson, who began a recent House session with a fabricated prayer to Jesus Christ that he falsely claimed Thomas Jefferson recited every day of his 8 years in presidency. Now, here's the thing. Jefferson did no such thing. The first record of this prayer that Johnson recited is from 1919, over a century after Jefferson left office. But here's the thing. Johnson's goal is not historical accuracy. It's advancing his Christian nationalist agenda. This is just red meat for his right-wing base. And while he misrepresents Jefferson's faith, his ideology, his principles, he ignores what Jefferson actually did do, the good and the bad. Jefferson literally rewrote the Bible. He did not consider himself a devout Christian. He was a deist. He believed in some higher power of some sort, but certainly did not identify as a Christian. And thus he rewrote the Bible to take out the part that he thought didn't fit. He vociferously advocated for the separation of church and state. He was adamant about this, that religion should have no business in government and government should have no business in religion. Keep the two separate. Jefferson also hosted the first White House iftar during Ramadan. A month of Ramadan is coming up. It's starting end of February, I think. And Muslims fast from sunrise to sunset. And then the evening when there's sunset, the breaking of the fast is called iftar, I-F-T-A-R, iftar time. And it's a wonderful moment because you've been, starving all day and now you get to eat. Well, Jefferson hosted an iftar at the White House, first one to do so. In fact, Jefferson owned a copy of the Holy Quran. Think about that. It's the George Sale translation. I think it was translated in the 1760s, maybe. But Jefferson owned a copy. He respected religious pluralism in America, and that's why he contemplated Muslims when he wrote his Virginia Statute of Religious Freedom. He saw Muslims as part and parcel of that. Now, there's some really terrible things that Jefferson did that Johnson will not acknowledge either. For example, Jefferson enslaved Sally Hemings, a young black girl, and then he impregnated her and had children by her, and then he enslaved those children as well. Jefferson did this. Sally Hemings was 14 or 15 at the time. And what bothers me about how we teach this story in school or even in just general history is that, oh, well, he had an interesting relationship with a woman that he had enslaved, and she was not really a slave. No, she was. He enslaved her. She was a minor. He impregnated her. He raped her. He had children by her, and then he enslaved those children as well. He owned up to 600 slaves at one point. This is who Jefferson was, by the way. There was this deep hypocrisy and contradiction in some of his actions compared to others. But Jefferson talks about none of this. He whitewashes, Speaker Johnson talks about none of this. He whitewashes all of this. He won't mention these facts because they don't fit his vision of an America governed by Christian theocracy. And he probably won't mention that Jefferson was an enslaver and a rapist because he just voted for a guy who is an adjudicated rapist as well, Trump. I suppose it's difficult for Johnson to acknowledge, much less to condemn that rape by Jefferson, given his allegiance to Donald Trump. But this is who we have as a House Speaker right now, a man who believes the Bible supersedes the U.S. Constitution. So it's hard to tell what he believes. And look, he's perfectly entitled to his personal faith and opinion. But in a secular government, the person second in line to the presidency shouldn't be so willing to undermine the U.S. Constitution. But the thing is, this threat of Christian nationalism under the Trump administration goes far beyond Johnson's theatrics. It's just embedded in the way MAGA does politics. Let's talk about Sebastian Gorka, a man who Trump appointed as deputy assistant to the president and senior director for counterterrorism. It's a problem for many reasons. Gorka is a man with a documented history of Nazi fraternizing. He's a con artist. Nazis praised his wearing of an emblem that has Nazi affiliations. Last week, Gorka was on television advising Americans to, quote, report suspicious behavior such as converting to Islam to the authorities. The man in charge of counterterrorism believes that practicing a constitutionally protected religion is somehow inherently suspicious, and so suspicious that they should be reported to the authorities for arrest. That's fascism. And finally, his Nazi affiliations and Islamophobic rhetoric notwithstanding, the country of Hungary has issued arrest warrants for Gorka for illegal weapons and ammunition charge. And given that the senior director role for counterterrorism does not require Senate confirmation, this is a man who will have direct access to Trump with no checks and balances whatsoever. This is the kind of hate-fueled rhetoric and discrimination coming from the MAGA crowd. This isn't about law and order. It's about white supremacy disguised as Christian nationalism. And then finally, before we go to break and bring on Ariana Jasmine, let's talk about Pete Hegseth, who Trump is considering for Secretary of Defense. Hegseth's the man who's openly declared kill all Muslims, according to eyewitness testimony. He wears tattoos with Nazi and white supremacy affiliations. He sees himself as a modern-day crusader who wants to, quote, turn the military into a Christian weapon, according to his recent books. But what makes him even more alarming is that his theology is influencing his actions in a way that's extraordinarily concerning. He recently moved his family to Tennessee to join a congregation led by Doug Wilson, a right-wing nut job who, and Politico reports about him, that Wilson's denomination opposes religious pluralism and embraces the idea of a nation founded on the premise that Jesus Christ is the Lord of all. He has written that owning slaves in biblical times was not antithetical to being a Christian. And while he says he rejects racism, he has asserted that the system of slaveholding in the South was far more humane than that of ancient Rome, although it still fell short of the biblical requirement for it, end quote. The next potential Secretary of Defense is a man influenced by a pastor who defends slavery as humane, who rejects religious pluralism, who thinks that this is a theocracy. And the thing is, guys, this is not fringe ideology at this point. This is mainstream MAGA Republican politics. And it's just terrifying to think that someone with these beliefs could be responsible for overseeing the world's most powerful military, including thousands of nuclear weapons. And again, I want to be clear, I distinguish Christian nationalism, i.e. the idea that Christianity should be the state religion of our nation, from Christianity as a religion, practiced peacefully and personally by countless Americans. Former is a threat. The latter is a constitutionally protected religion. But this Christian nationalism is spreading rapidly, and we need to make sure that we are resolute. Corporate media won't sound the alarm. They'll whitewash away these lies, downplay the extremism, and treat these figures as if they're part of some political landscape, when in reality, these are fascists. That's why these independent voices, that's why your support and advocacy and partnership is so critical. This is why I ask you guys to subscribe, not for the fun of it, because we need to elevate these discourses pushing back against this kind of nationalism. If we want to resist this wave of Christian nationalism and fight for a pluralistic, democratic America, we need to stay informed. We need to speak out. We need to hold those in power accountable. And look, despite the many, many flaws of America's founding fathers, they were resolute in separation of religion and state. And that is one principle we have to continue to demand we protect, we uphold at all costs, because the future of our republic literally depends on it. Hit that subscribe button if you're listening on Substack. When we come back from break, we'll have Ariana Jasmine to talk about the California wildfires, climate change, the history of corruption in California among Democrats. And I say this as somebody who's center left, but we got to call out, on the sake of justice, our own, we want to uphold justice and bring about meaningful reform. We'll talk about that. And then we'll close the show out with some really horrifying updates out of Israel and Palestine. You're listening to the Qasim Rashid Show here on Sirius XM Urban News Channel 126. The most awesome show in the multiverse. We'll be right back after this break with Ariana Jasmine. Welcome back. You're listening to the Qasim Rashid Show here on Sirius XM Urban View Channel 126, the most awesome show in the multiverse. If you're listening on Substack, make sure you hit subscribe, and also subscribe to Ariana Jasmine. She just launched her Substack. It's called the Ariana Jasmine's Justice Journal, AJ Cubed, as I like to call it. Ariana's been on our show before, so we're excited to have her back. She is a political commentator, an expert on Mideast affairs, writes about progressive issues, and just an all-around amazing human being. Ariana, thanks for being with us today.
Hi, thank you so much for plugging in my Substack. Before we start, I just wanted to apologize to your audience because I was pronouncing Kamala Harris's name wrong, and they let me know that I was pronouncing her name wrong. So I wanted to apologize. That was not intentional or deliberate. I just
That's
was
wild.
pronouncing her name wrong. So I know some viewers were offended by it, rightfully so. So I just wanted to give that disclaimer really quick.
I think anybody still upset about that needs to relax a little bit, but let's leave that as it is.
Okay.
You're in California, you're in Northern California, so you're safe from the fires right now, but I wanted to bring you on not only to talk about what's happening locally, statewide, but you've worked in the climate justice initiatives in California, and so you're pretty familiar with kind of what's happening on the ground. You wrote a great piece on Substack. Before we dive into it, because there's a lot of really important things I want to cover here, what is the mood in California? How are people feeling? Kind of what's happening right now?
Yeah, well, I'm in Northern California. I'm almost 6 hours away from what's happening, but I have spoken to a lot of my content creator friends or people in the creative space who do live in LA that I do know. A lot of them in Hollywood have evacuated. I'd say the mood is pretty somber. And I'm not there, from what I've been hearing from my friends, it seems like everyone's just kind of in a state of mourning and shock because I don't think people understand this is highly unusual for a place like LA. I mean, I know we talk about wildfires in California, how California is always affected by it. But for a large metropolitan city to get hit so fast
Yeah.
in the winter when it's not even technically fire season, it's very bizarre. Obviously, it's not bizarre because we know about climate change and the impacts of it, but we haven't seen something like this before, and it's truly devastating. I would say the mood's pretty bad.
I read a tweet that was going viral right now that had a picture of just the devastation and cars just kind of abandoned on the road and people fleeing. And the tweet kind of tongue in cheek said, "This reminds me about the time I got upset when climate protesters blocked traffic in LA." And I think the point that those climate protesters are making is, if you think this is bad, what we're doing, just wait till the entire damn county, LA County, is under some kind of fire advisory. And that's what we're seeing. I mean, we're seeing entire neighborhoods wiped out. People are filling up garbage cans with water to try to put fires out because the fire hydrants are gone. I think we've had 0.1% of the normal rain in the area over the last year, which has kind of dried out that completely. You wrote a really thoughtful piece for your Substack, and one of the first things that caught my eye, I mean, you put some great resources on there. We'll plug that for folks who are looking for resources. I know some companies are like Airbnb is making housing available, and there's a bunch of shelters and all important stuff. But you put something in here that really enraged me, and I'm angry as I'm reading this right now. You say LAFD's budget, Los Angeles Fire Department's budget, decreased by about 18 million this year compared to last year, and they did this while giving the green light to a 4-year commitment to grow the LAPD contract by $1 billion. The council agreed to a nearly 13% increase in pay for new officers, 12% cost of living increase in the next 4 years, and various bonuses and incentives in addition to the already approved $3 billion LAPD budget. This would cost an extra $75 million in 24-25, another 91 in 25-26, another 95 in 26-27. It's interesting how Los Angeles has so much money for policing, yet found it fitting to cut the fire department's budget. And this part, it did make me laugh. What are the police going to do? Shoot the fire?
I had to add a little snarky to it. It's ridiculous.
It's like you have to laugh, otherwise we cry. But like, what the hell? Like, and this is the point, and I want you to make this point. I don't want to take all your thunder.
Of course.
These Democrats or Republicans who voted for this budget change? That's the question. Were the Democrats or Republicans? There were Democrats,
Right.
right? And that's the part that I tell our listeners, like this whole vote blue no matter who mantra is enraging to me, because as you point out, here you have the city council of basically all Democrats deciding, well, we're in a climate crisis, we have fires regularly, let's give police more money and gut the fire department. How do we respond to this? What should we be doing to make our voices heard that this is just not acceptable?
I do want to point out that this the $1 billion that the city council passed, it passed 12-13. So it wasn't by a small majority. It was all of them but one who were pro the police getting $1 billion budget within the span of 4 years, extra on top of what they're already getting. But I saw this really good tweet yesterday, and it basically implied it was like, LA, I hope this fire radicalizes you. Like, I hope you realize, what the implications of this fire are, and how, the government didn't show up the way that they needed to. And I do want to put this disclaimer in there that Karen Bass, the mayor, was under a lot of pressure to like pass policing measures and do more policing, because there's this notion that there's been, quote, a lot of crime and a lot of homelessness, which isn't actually true when you look at the statistics. But um I think the people should definitely, I mean, I think the issue is that a lot of us think voting, we show up every 4 years, because a lot of people don't even show up in the midterms. We show up every 4 years, we vote, and then we leave. That's not enough. It's really not enough. Like, we have to do a lot more. We have to join mutual aids. We have to, go to city council meetings and voice our opinions. We have to show up to these protests. We have to do more. Voting is not enough. And I know we keep saying this, but I think this is a clear example of how it's just not enough. I mean, even
Yeah.
the Democrats that you vote for they'll screw you over like they did
Yeah,
here. I
no,
don't know.
my member of Congress who I ran against is talking about the importance of the climate crisis while taking money from Exxon. It's the most asinine thing in the world. How the hell are you gonna have the audacity to talk about the climate crisis while you're being funded by Exxon, who these oil and gas companies, according to leaked memos from the 1970s, admitted that, hey, what we're doing now is going to cause a climate crisis. It's like they were looking through a crystal ball of what's happening right now. And the thing is, they weren't looking through a crystal ball. They were following the science. The science was explicitly clear that if we engage in this climate catastrophe behavior, it will create climate catastrophe. Like if we light this match on fire, there will be fire. Like it was that straightforward. And what we're dealing with now is kind of the commoditization of basic living, and we're seeing homes destroyed. And speaking of homes destroyed, you wrote about this. I want you to talk about this. That people
Mhm.
are losing their fire insurance, and that insurance companies skipped out in the last couple of months and are still skipping out now. Can you talk a bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've been seeing a trend that started around 2022. So the Department of Insurance is saying that seven of the top 12 insurance carriers have either discontinued their existing homeowners policies or stopped selling new ones for homeowners in California. And that is because of the increase in wildfires and natural disasters that's been happening in California, mainly being wildfires. In August of 2024, 17,000 Liberty Mutual customers in California lost their fire insurance policies as well. I saw a lot of people on Twitter talking about farmers insurance dropping them too as homeowner, insurance carriers. But this is a trend because when you look at it, it's not, at the end of the day for these companies, profit is the most important thing. When you have a whole entire multi-blocks of houses in very expensive areas getting completely scorched, at the end of the day, it's not very profitable for them to, cover all of these houses and give you all of your money back and etc. So it's starting to become a trend. From my research, you're actually lucky if you have homeowners insurance in California, let alone it being with fire protection. I would say having fire protection with homeowners insurance is more on the rarer side now. And that's going to continue to be a trend because the insurance companies are just not willing to cover it.
Yeah, and I think this is where there's a tweet some celebrity put out, and then deleted it right away after he got roasted. No pun intended, where he said something to the effect of, are there any private firefighters out there to help save my home? I'll pay any amount. I don't care. Like money's no object. And then he got just ratioed to hell, and then he deleted his tweet. But it's just so indicative of the wealthy thinking that, well, I'm super rich. I don't need to worry about insurance. I don't need to worry about blah blah, because well, no, eventually there's just not enough money in the world to stop a massive wildfire. And with insurance companies deciding, the hell with you guys, we're worried more about our bottom line than anything else, this is going to get worse. It's going to be unsustainable. And I was talking about this related to a different issue in the intro of the show about, I just don't think people realize how bad it's going to get, right? As you said, Ariana, this is happening in January, for God's sake. This is not fire season, right? Typically, it's a curveball. It's like that deep freeze in Texas a couple years ago where that killed, I don't know, 30 some people. Like at least that deep freeze was in the winter, and it was expected that sometimes that can happen. But here to have fires right now, it is simply unsustainable. What are you hearing from the climate justice organizations that you've worked with? What's their mentality? How are they responding to this?
Yeah, I will say I haven't been in a lot of contact with them. I've kind of just been like doing a lot of content on my own and just responding to it because I've been working 12-hour days since this fire started. It's been pretty much just go, 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 not even lifting my head up. But I will say, to answer your question, before I became a content creator, I worked at Pacific Gas and Electric's Wildfire Safety Operations Center. They opened that center because of all the wildfires happening in California. And just to like respond to what you were saying, a lot of people, especially on threads, were responding to my threads and they were saying, "Oh, well, you've never been in SoCal. It was really sunny and hot in SoCal."
Yeah.
And as a person that actually worked in a wildfire safety operations center, I can tell you that it doesn't matter if it's sunny in January or December. It's not, the wildfire is not supposed to be a thing right now, just point blank, period.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people aren't really seeing that. But to answer your question, yes, there are a lot of mutual aids. There are a lot of shelters opening. There are a lot of businesses opening their areas too. I think right now the response is really, how can we help people now? And then repairing the devastation is obviously going to be after all the fires are contained. So, I mean, I think right now we're just really looking at mutual aids, places that are offering shelters. There's a lot of mom and pop small businesses that are opening up their parking lots and their facilities as well. Really just being able to push that out and make sure people see it.
Just tuning in, we're speaking with Ariana Jasmine, brilliant thought leader out of California, talking about the wildfires and what we can do to play a role. One of the stories that More Perfect Union and a few other outlets are reporting on is the story of a billionaire couple that effectively stole California's water supply. And like this, it sounds crazy, but that's actually, what's happening. That's what's happened in California. And I'm reading from the article published by Anthony Mascaro and Sean Morrow back in 2022, by the way. This is not like a recent article from last week. They've been warning about this. And they say that when 40 million Californians suffer through unprecedented drought, one billionaire couple owns a massive share of the state's water system, largely seized in a series of secretive meetings 2 decades ago. That system has largely paid for, or was largely paid for by the very taxpayers whose water these billionaires hold hostage. And, what's crazy to think about this is that something as fundamental as water is privately owned by billionaires. If you drink Fiji water, if you eat the pistachios, the wonderful pistachios, the pomegranate, wonderful pomegranate, the shaped like a figure 8 bottle. If you consume any of those, you're funding these billionaires. And Ariana, it's not a real question, but I just want to hear you rant about it. How the hell do billionaires own water? Like, it's rain, like it's water. How the hell did we decide it's a good idea to let two people control water needed by 40 million people to live?
I mean, this doesn't surprise me. We can look at Nestle's history with water and access to water. It's not a new phenomenon where millionaires or oligarchs are taking over water access. If you think about it on a business perspective, everyone needs water and everyone needs clean water. So, in my opinion, obviously a business shark would take over that idea,
Yeah.
quickly. But I saw it, admittingly, embarrassingly enough, I actually found out about this story yesterday when I was scrolling on Twitter nonstop, and it made me so mad, but at the end of the day, it didn't make me surprised because this is how this is late stage capitalism. This is really late stage capitalism, and that's why it makes me so mad when people are like, "Don't make this fire political. Stop responding to this fire and talking about politics and left and right." And I'm like, everything from the start to what's going to be the end of this fire is political. The
Yeah.
responses are political from government. Climate change is political. Are you going to be able to rebuild your house because your insurance company dropped you or not? That's political. Do you have access to water? It's political. There's this quote that I saw on social media a long time ago, and it said, "It doesn't matter if you don't do politics, politics is going to do you." And this
Yeah.
is literally that situation. Like, it doesn't matter if you don't, well, if you're, quote, not into politics, it doesn't matter. It's going to impact you at some point. And I think this is the best example of it, where it's impacting people that like I worked at a wildfire operations center. I never thought I would see a big metropolitan city like this go up in flames within the matter of 24 hours. So, you know,
Yeah,
It,
and to your point about late stage cap, and this is, this is late stage capitalism. We just been talking extensively about something as foundational as healthcare being a human right, being commoditized, and people dying. According to Lancet, nearly 70,000 Americans a year die due to lack of basic healthcare. Both of our parents are suffering, cancer and Parkinson's respectively, and we're seeing the horrific lack of support of this healthcare system. Um, Going back to this billionaire couple, the Resnicks, as you read more about them, you realize that they are their wealth is so effective that what they're doing is not just, there's no mystery to it. They've basically bought politicians. The late Dianne Feinstein was in their pocket, and whenever they needed something, they would contact her, and she would make sure it got done. This article by Perfect Union really delves into just the level of corruption. And this is, again, I'm enraged at Dianne Feinstein. Like, you stayed in office when you didn't need to, well past when you were able to function as a normal human being. Your daughter had to be your power of attorney because you couldn't function, but you were in charge of 40 million Americans in California and 340 million Americans nationwide. And now we find out that you were in the pocket of the Resnicks, and whatever studies or whatever legislation or rules they wanted you to pass, it was suddenly passed. And it's just enraging to me how many people are suffering so that billionaires can change their net worth from 5 billion to 5.1 billion dollars. And I've always said, it's not, people on the left get upset with me but for saying this. I don't think capitalism is the issue here alone. It's capitalism that lacks any safeguards. It's, I have a friend of mine, a mentor, who calls it, what we need is capitalism with a conscience, where people can make money off of whatever widget they invented or service they created, but not at the expense of basic human rights: food, water, shelter, healthcare, education, clothing. These six things, to name them, should be protected, should be insured, should be guaranteed. And then once you guarantee those things, you realize something remarkable happens. Local economies thrive. Young people thrive. Innovation thrives. Business development and new startups thrive because you have the basic necessities to be successful. And so where we are now in California, watching this fire and devastate, I think the fear is that we're not sure how bad it's going to get, because as right now we're recording this, 3 days after the fire, it seems to be still expanding. It's 0% contained. The winds seem to be getting worse. Ariana, can you talk about some of the resources folks have available to them if they're being impacted by these fires?
Yes, absolutely. In my Substack, actually, the first sentence is a hyperlink to a Google Doc that's getting updated every single day with food pantries, animal shelters, evacuation centers. I also have another doc that's similar to this that I will send to you too. I could show you, Instagram posts, but I think Google Docs are the best way for people who are impacted to really kind of see everything in front of them. It also has, phone apps that you can download as well. So I will send that to you. I think those have the best resources because there's just a lot of different places that are offering shelter, and it's good to have it all congregated on one doc.
One thing that I really admire about Ariana and why I like bringing her on the show is that she doesn't just talk the talk. A lot of her advocacy focuses around calls to action. And so when you subscribe to her Substack and follow her work, don't be surprised if after informing you, she also asks you to actually do something. If that makes you uncomfortable, you're not going to like her Substack. But if you're sick and tired of people sitting on their ass and doing nothing, then you want to follow Ariana because she will make sure she puts you to work. Just last week, you did a fundraiser to raise money for backpacks for kids from low-income communities, which, look, I grew up low income. We grew up on food stamps. And I gotta tell you, there's nothing more rewarding than to have a shiny new backpack. It was like the greatest thing in the world. It was like you're flexing it, you're bragging about it, you're decorating it, you're putting your, whatever you want on it, but it's your badass backpack. And I think I only had two backpacks throughout all of elementary and high school because we just couldn't afford. I had one from first through fifth grade and I had another one from sixth grade into college. And in college, a friend was like, dude, you were 11 when you had this thing. You should probably upgrade. And I finally upgraded at that point in time. But good on you. We're down to the last 6 or 7 minutes. Uh, would love for you to share, Ariana, to the extent you feel comfortable. What are some of the projects you're working on? What are some of the initiatives you're working on? And how can folks support your efforts and support your work?
Oh my God, thank you so much. That means a lot coming from you, first of all. Second of all, yes, we fundraised $2,000 for new backpacks and school supplies for, so about 200 students are going to be getting new backpacks. And these are students who are either really low income or running away from, the families are running away from domestic violence or they're seeking shelter. So I'm very excited to be able to deliver those backpacks. If you do still want to donate, there is still a little bit of time. I need to update. I need to order them in bulk. So if you do want to donate to that initiative, you can donate to my Venmo, which I will give to you, Qasim, but it's just Ariana Jasmine. And other initiatives that I'm working on, I just launched my Substack, so thank you so much for talking about that. Will be really pouring my heart and soul into that and really just amplifying people's voices right now. I know you and I are both the same when it comes to this, but my platform is very much the people focused. At the end of the day, it's all about human rights and social justice and people having access to the basic human rights that they need. And so that's really what I'm working on. But I will also be continuing to work with different nonprofits that are helping families who are in need of very basic things like food and, school supplies and whatnot. So I will be posting about that more too. And I will be doing a delivery and we'll be seeing the kids getting the backpacks, but that's just the start. That's my New Year's resolution, is to use my platform to help local nonprofits more. And I know New Year's resolutions fall flat by February, but I'm actually serious about this.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. And you guys, if you're listening in, this is one thing I've been emphasizing for a long time. We're seeing this capitulation of corporate media, this capitulation of politicians to billionaires. What we're seeing in California right now is the end result of that capitulation, where they're so focused on profits that they forget about basic people, about the basic human beings. And the reason why I ask you to support people like Ariana, why I bring them onto the show, is because we need solutions that are based in practical application. And what I mean by that is I can't just sit here and rage against how evil billionaires are without giving you a solution on people doing things the right way. And Ariana is an example of that. And so when I ask you to support her, it's not just because I want you to support my friend. I got plenty of friends who I love to death, but they're useless. And so I'm not going to ask you to support their initiatives. I'm asking you to support Ariana because she's doing the work. I'm just serious, right? We all have those friends where you're like, I love you to death, but I can't recommend you for that job or something because you're just, no, it's not going to be a good look, but I'll buy you dinner. But here, like Ariana's doing the work, and we need to support these kinds of voices, guys, because if we're not going to actively support these kinds of voices, we're not going to make active and meaningful progress to the work that needs to be done. And on everything from, climate justice to reproductive health, to broader healthcare issues, to economic justice, Ariana's been at the forefront, leading from the front. And I think I probably have another connection with her because neither one of us come from wealthy backgrounds. We both come from immigrant families. I am an immigrant, and so we share a lot there. But to me, it's the work that she's doing now. Before you go, Ariana, can you plug all your socials and plug how folks can get involved and any final parting words of wisdom?
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you so much. It means a lot once again. I really appreciate it. The best way you can get connected with me is through social media. I'm Ariana Jasmine, quite literally everywhere. You can connect with me on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Twitch. I do it all. And I just launched my Substack, and my Substack is just like Qasim's. It's totally free. If you really believe in my work, you can subscribe for $5 a month. But it's totally up to you. You don't have to. The subscription is free and available for everyone. And, parting words of wisdom, I would just say it does feel like, no pun intended, the world is literally burning down. We're, what is it, 9 days into 2025, and I've had the craziest string of news in the past 9 days. It's actually crazy, and Trump is about to become president. So it's going to be a lot. It's going to be a lot. We have this phrase in Farsi and it translates really weird in English, but it's basically like rub the oil all over your body and just get ready and just kind of plunge into it. That's the same idea, just get ready, pour the Vaseline on you, rub it all over you, and just, lock in, get all of your resources, and let's jump into the next 4 years because it's going to be a lot of misinformation. It's going to be a lot of just crazy things happening, crazy news. Extremism brings out the extremism in everyone, especially if a president is extreme. So I would just say, get ready. We have a couple days until Trump is coming in, lock in, do everything you got to do for your mental health, and let's do it.
I love that. Yeah, I mean, I think this point about it radicalizes, like, to me, we need to become radical in how we serve humanity. We need to be deliberate about serving humanity because this is not a joke. This is not a drill. As you said, the world is literally on fire, and it doesn't have to be this way. For me, it's always reflecting on James Baldwin when he talks about, he was asked, how do you overcome the despair you'll feel for the world? And he goes, I don't despair. I'm enraged by the world, but I don't despair. I'm not hopeless. I can't tell the children that there's no hope. And that's my parting words to kind of echo what Ariana really beautifully said, that we can't be hopeless. As hopeless as it seems, we just cannot be hopeless, because that ensures defeat. That ensures things get worse and worse and worse. I can't look at young people today and tell them there's no hope. We need to keep fighting. Ariana, thank you for being with us. We hope to have you back on soon.
Thank you so much. I hope to come back. Thank you for listening. I appreciate it.
Ariana Jasmine, follow her across all the socials at Ariana Jasmine. Subscribe to her Substack, Ariana Jasmine's Justice Journal, AJ Cubed. If that's easier to remember, you're listening to the Qasim Rashid Show here on Sirius XM Urban View, channel 126, the most awesome show in the multiverse. We'll be right back after this break, where I want to discuss the latest updates on Israel's siege on Palestine and some shockingly painful and horrifying developments regarding the narrative of mass rape by Hamas. We'll be right back after this break. Welcome back. You're listening to the Qasim Rashid Show here on Sirius XM Urban View, channel 126, the most awesome show in the multiverse. That was Ariana Jasmine, host of, well, not host, writer of her Substack, Ariana Jasmine's Justice Journal, AJ Cube. Make sure you give her a follow. Make sure you give her a subscription. She's doing really good work, and I admire her for the hard work she's doing against all odds. So we need to support these folks. I've always said that the money we spend is a reflection of the kind of world we want to create. Let's create a world that's more thoughtful and more educated and more informed. I want to close the show out with a very difficult conversation about what's happening in Palestine. We've already talked at length about this, guys. The UN, ICC, ICJ, Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, Humanity First, ANERA, the list just goes on and on about the condemnations of these war crimes by the Netanyahu regime. About how this is genocide, this is ethnic cleansing. And we've seen US State Department reports confirm this as well. And yet no accountability. On the contrary, Biden just announced that one of his last acts as president is going to be to send $8 billion more in weapons to Netanyahu. It's mortifying. It's indefensible. It's inexcusable. New report has just come out now that's quite mortifying. That after 16 months of investigations, Israeli prosecutors are announcing that they have filed 0 criminal complaints for rape or sexual assault by Hamas from October 7th. This is shocking to me for a number of reasons. Back in November of 2023, the Israeli government prosecutors said that they have found overwhelming evidence of rape and sexual assault. Overwhelming evidence of rape and sexual assault. And now, in January of 2025, they're saying we don't have enough evidence to file even a single charge of rape or sexual assault. Not one. How that math doesn't math. How do you go from saying we have overwhelming evidence and having everyone from Netanyahu to Biden to Harris to literally every elected official ad nauseum talk about rape and sexual assault by Hamas. And then now when it comes time to actually file criminal charges, you say, well, we actually don't have any evidence that this happened. In fact, we don't have enough to prove that any of this happened. I mean, does that not bother you folks? The last 16 months, this was the narrative. And now Israeli prosecutors are saying, we don't have any evidence of this at all. But it gets worse. It actually gets worse. Israel's oldest paper, Haaretz, is now reporting that the Israeli government is blocking the UN from investigating the sexual crimes attributed to Hamas on October 7th. It's not Hamas blocking it. It's the Israeli government is blocking the UN from investigating these sexual crimes. So on one hand, the Israeli government is saying, we don't actually have enough evidence to prosecute rape and sexual assault by Hamas. And so the UN says, well, you made a pretty big deal out of it. We're going to come in and investigate. And by the way, when we investigate, we can then put Hamas on our blacklist of entities guilty of sexual violence. So yeah, let's just go ahead. Let us come in. We're the experts. We'll come in and investigate. And the Israeli government said, nope, you are not doing that. You are not going to come in and investigate Hamas's war crimes. I'm sorry, what? Why would the Israeli government block the UN from investigating Hamas's crimes of rape and sexual assault? Why would they do that? Well, here's why. One reason you already know, the Israeli government's admitting that they can't find any evidence. But there's another even more sinister reason. Yeah, yes, even more sinister. It's from the Haaretz report as well. They're saying that Israel fears that a UN investigation into Hamas would also expose Israel and the Israeli military by documenting the rape and sexual violence they've committed against Palestinians in Israeli prisons. Think about that. The Israeli government is saying, not only can we not find any evidence of sexual violence by Hamas. This is not me saying it. I want to be very clear. I swear to God, if somebody cuts this out and says I'm saying this, I'm going to scream. This is the Israeli government. The Israeli prosecutor is saying this. I'm quoting them. That they have not found enough evidence to file a single charge 16 months later. And now they're going on to say, the government's going on to say, you're not going to investigate it either, and you're not going to investigate us, because they're afraid that doing so will expose them to be put on the UN's blacklist of organizations that commit sexual violence. Guys, this is just beyond the pale. And I'm willing to bet, for 99% of folks listening to this episode, this is the first you've heard about it. Because almost no corporate media, and I looked as the recording of this, Washington Post, New York Times, almost no corporate media or national politicians have even acknowledged this, let alone done a deep dive into it. Just a violation of justice in every respect, and they're not even willing to acknowledge it. New York Times ran an entire piece called Screams Without Words about the alleged rapes. And now that Israeli prosecutors are saying, hey, we don't actually have any evidence that this occurred, nothing. Complete silence. A refusal to even acknowledge what they published. Just mind-numbing, mind-boggling. This is why I ask you guys to subscribe to my work and my advocacy, because as a human rights lawyer, my allegiance is not to any country or to any people or to any nationality. My allegiance is to the tenets of absolute justice for all humanity. Justice for Palestine, justice for Israel, justice for America. That's what a human rights lawyer is supposed to do, to maintain justice, to call out injustice when it happens. For example, the Palestinian Authority banned Al Jazeera. I called it out. They recently banned Al Jazeera, and I called it out because it is an unjust act that they've committed. It is contrary to the tenets of justice and humanity. And I have no problem and no hesitation doing that. This is why I ask you to subscribe, because you know, with me, you're going to get accurate, honest, unbiased, unfiltered information with receipts and with facts behind them. And what we're seeing right now out of the Israeli government is unsustainable. It's unjust. These are the war crimes that we've been warning about. So if you're listening, hit that subscribe button and continue to share this content, because we need to create a narrative of justice and integrity in the work that we do. All right, my friends, thank you again for tuning in. Thank you for letting me rant and rave. And thank you for the work you're doing to protect our democracy, to protect our climate, to protect our humanity. Be sure to follow us on social media at Qasim Rashid across all platforms. We will continue to advance a show that builds on compassion and justice and accountability for those in power. Got a great show lined up for next week. Be sure to tune in, same time, same place at 10 a.m. Eastern on Sirius XM Urban View, channel 126, the most awesome show in the multiverse. My friends, be fierce, lead with compassion and justice. Do not give up hope, and continue speaking truth to power. Till next week, peace.